Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank all of you to be here and thank organizer to give me a chance to be here with you to improve my network and learn from all of you from this morning. So today I would like to share very short about Vietnam situation relating to the carbon market. So I remember last year I have a presentation talking about Vietnam progress, how to build the carbon market. But right now, it's not too many change. So that's why I would like I don't want to repeat it again. So summary a little bit. So as you may know about Vietnam situation, we already updated the NDC in 2022 with rising the ambition target from 9% to 15.8% with unconditional contribution, and from 27 to 43.5% with the conditional contribution. So from our country, it's very high ambition, but we think that we can do it with the supporting from all community, local community, and international supporting. So Vietnam already, after setting the target, ambition target, we aware that carbon pricing is one of the most important thing to help us to get to achieve the target. And in Vietnam, we experience with the international markets by implementing the CDM project and JCM project. And as you may know, Vietnam is one of the four top country with the highest CDM project, around like 250 project in Vietnam, a lot. And we right now, from the Montreal calculation, we estimate around like 40 million carbon credit already sell and on the way to sell by the CDM and JCM project. So the lesson learned, this lesson learned and basic for Vietnam to move forward and implement the mechanism for carbon for domestic carbon credits in Vietnam now. And currently right now the PMI project in World Bank, I know maybe we focusing on, as the first we're focusing on three sector, the thermal power, the cement sector, and the let me see, I forgot it. Sorry. But right now, in the future, we with the support from World Bank, we move forward to the waste sector, which is belong responsibility to Montreal. So the carbon credit is important, and we found that right now. We, even though the situation is right now is we plan to implement the carbon market in Vietnam from the pilot one from 2025, and it will become the reality in 2028. And the PMI project in Vietnam should start from 2023. It means last year. But because of some trouble, as that's called like trouble or some issues, until now, as this morning, we already know that Vietnam not yet signed an agreement between the Vietnam government and the World Bank. So that it means that we not yet get a support from the PMI project already, but based on the PMI project, we develop the laws of environment protection, and we already put the carbon market in that one. And by ourselves, we still on the way to do that. And right now, we already set up and release the regulation about the MRV, but the challenge is right here is the emitter, the facilities, the companies not yet know how to do that exactly very well because it's very new for them. So that's why this morning we talk about the capacity building. It's very important right now in Vietnam also. And the DCC is the host, which is doing a lot, too many training course and capacity building also based on our resources. And we also ask for supporting from other organizations such as World Bank or others, GIS, something like that, to improve the knowledge of the emitter of the companies about the MIV, how to do that. We support that, and our center is functioning to do that, to support for the emitter, to support for the company to do the MIV system. And regarding to the future, right now, as you know, maybe you know, World Bank support for Vietnam to sell carbon credit from the forest. And we are on the way to develop another project like that one in the middle highland of Vietnam also. And this is important, but still conflict a little bit between how many for the NDC, how many we can sell or something like that. Not yet make the decision. So still conflict a little bit between the line of ministries to make the final decisions. That I would like to share with all of you. And this morning I learned from the payroll, I learned from the different country about the forestry crediting. This would be very interested with that. And regarding to the main difficulty to implement the carbon market in Vietnam right now, we just think about the first one. We lack up the data. The data is very important things. And we also liking up the registry, the carbon registry also, even though, it's important, but we have no resources enough to do that right now. And we will do it in the future to get the target to operate the carbon market in 2025. And right now we are doing with the emission allocation for different company, and it's also very difficult without the data, without the good data. I mean, the good data is very important and very hard for us. And we also like a expert and like a knowledge about that one. I mean, for the community, for emitter, for company also. And even though we already set up the MRV, but still quite new, very new to the emitter. So how to implement it very well is difficult. It's difficult. And we also finding that one challenge is identifying the policy of option to encourage the private sector to involve with the carbon market right now. They still hesitate. They do not understand very well the benefit of them if they can join the carbon market or not. So that is very, very problem right now. And the last one is how to coordinate between line of ministry. This is very important things because sometimes it conflict benefits, sometimes it's not really understand about each other, sometimes not yet get agreement about the same strategy or something like that. So how to collect all of them, sitting together and get agreement from all of them, that is very important things. And that's a lesson learned from our side, from Vietnam, to implement the carbon market right now in very short 10 minutes. I would like to share with all of you and ready to get some question or discussion from all of you. And some of you here maybe know very well about Vietnam situation, and I expect that you can discuss with me about that one and we can learn from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me introduce you, please, to Angela Rodriguez. She works in the mitigation group of the Directorate of Climate Change and Risk Management of the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development of Colombia, especially on issues related to carbon markets and accounting rules for mitigation results. She's experienced in the analysis of economic instruments such as carbon tax and its exemption mechanism for climate change mitigation, as well as the integrity analysis of initiatives to reduce emissions or removals or greenhouse gases in the framework of MRV systems. Please, Angela, your 10 minutes.
Thank you. And okay, I will be talking about how the crediting mechanism in Colombia was raised and why was it kind of limited to 50% recently. And let's begin by kind of the context in the framework of the carbon tax in Colombia from 2017. It was also raised the need to count on some kind of compliance flexibility for paying the tax, let's say it that way. So that's why a crediting mechanism was raised also by hand with the carbon tax. That's kind of the simple reason, but also it comes from kind of trying to or aiming to direct private resources towards mitigation outcomes activities. In that way, it would result in, at the same time, mitigation outcomes and the co-benefits regarding, for example, social and economic resources for communities that would be implementing those kinds of activities. Since its implementation, actually, that mechanism accelerated the growth of the voluntary carbon market in the country, and in that way, we could say, for example, 70% of that carbon market in the country was moving again. Compared with the scenario before the carbon tax and its exemption mechanism. At the same time, there are many communities that say that this kind of mechanism has facilitated the allocation of private resources or private funds towards its territories among with some co-benefits for them. But at the same time, we have seen some allegations from those ethnic communities involving, for example, claims that point to violation of their human rights and also the social and environmental safeguards. Although there are not the totality or the whole of the cases, but it is an alert that indicates the need of protecting those rights, of course, and at the same time how we need some control or enforcement for those social and environmental safeguards, as well as the integrity of the environmental integrity of those outcomes. Regarding and that kind of introduces how and why we in the government, in the tax reform of 2022, we decided to limit the mechanism to 50%. As I've mentioned, this mechanism allows the early offsetting of the emissions by 100% from 2017 to 2022. But given that it is a corrective tax, the carbon tax, it aims to correct behavior on exactly on the demand of fossil fuels. That economic signal that the carbon tax would generate could be weakened by that mechanism, that offsetting mechanism, by allowing 100% of compensation or offsetting. And at the same time, it should be borne in mind that offsetting doesn't imply a net emission reduction. So in that way, that's kind of the reasoning behind the exception mechanism was limited to 50% in order to strengthen the economic signal that was brought by the carbon tax in a way that it should incentivize taxpayers to seek for improving efficiencies or also innovation in their processes in terms to to reduce GHG emissions. And it is expected also to make a greater contribution to the NDC in the same way that it would allow not only to offset emissions, but to reduce further in the actual sectors that are taxed. While at the same time it would aim for a fair and equitable participation of communities in these kinds of instruments through the initiatives or mitigation activities. And finally, I would end up with kind of 2 or 3 lessons learned from the country level in terms, for example, of a robust MRV system in both not only mitigation, but also in the financing, because the way it could translate into results should be also kept while in a frequent and robust monitoring. And it would mean strengthening baselines, also strengthening the methodologies and its approval, among other issues that should be worked inside that MRV. In second hand, I would mention the compliance of the compliance monitoring and the reinforcement points with interinstitutional articulation, but not only in the way of the carbon tax enforcement, but also on the mitigation outcomes and the implementation of social and environmental safeguards in territories with the communities. And finally, for this mechanism to incentivize the changes that are needed, that we all know we need in our countries, for example, in productive activities, while it is clear, we also need it to incentivize in many other sectors, for example, industry, waste, and transport, not only in the forestry and REDD+, which are currently kind of the 75%, we could say, of the offsets submitted in the mechanism. Of course, that would need or that would imply increasing the rate of the carbon tax, but given the social and economic conditions of our country, it wouldn't be as feasible as, for example, limiting the percentage of the offsetting and at the same time strengthening its signal. And yeah, that would be from my lightning talk. It should have been shorter, but I'm open for your questions and for, of course, the ideas and all the knowledge from you all.
Thank you, Angela. You have plenty of time yet. Before introducing Philippe, I want to acknowledge that temperature management has been an issue. And many of us have told us, many of you have told us, please, can you raise the temperature a little bit? It's impossible. So we have two options. We can have AC on or AC off. So when it starts to be very cold, please let us know and we'll manage to turn it off. And then when you feel sleepy and tired, let us know so that we can turn it on. We're doing the best we can. Um, Let me introduce you to Philippe Quecois. He's in charge of Quebec's International Carbon Pricing Partnership for Quebec's Ministry of Environment, the fight against climate change, wildlife, and parks. He coordinates the various working groups whose objective is to develop Quebec's leading expertise in carbon markets, carbon pricing, greenhouse gas emission reductions, and market linkages. He has also worked within the Directorate on the development of a carbon sequestration offsetting protocol for afforestation and reforestation activities on private lands. Please, Grégoire.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. So in Quebec, we have a carbon market and ETS since 2013 and linked with California since 2014. So it's our 10th year anniversary this year. And the ETS covered 80% of the GHG emission in Quebec. So it's the sector of transport, electricity, industry, residential, commercial, and institutional. And the 20% left, it's where we can do some offset projects. So we're talking most about agriculture and waste, and also LUCF, so the land use. We can do some offset project in that sectors. In Quebec, we have a target to diminish our GHG emission minus 37.5% below the 1990 emissions for 2030. To obtain that, and with our 10th anniversary of the carbon market, we're doing an evaluation of the assessments of some parameters of the cap and trade system. And in that, we are evaluating some parameters of the offsets. We have 6 protocols in force at the moment, so you can read them there. For I forgot to mention that we accept 8% for the use of the offset in the cap and trade system. So the emitters can use up to 8% of their to limit their right of emissions. All the rest they have to buy from the auctions. And so for the option for the 2027 and 2029 compliance period, we are looking at 3 different options. We made some public consultations in 2023, and we are still evaluating those options at the moment. The first option is status quo. The other option is reducing the limit on the use of offset credits. For example, reducing from 8% to 4% for the period 2027-2029. California already lowered their offset for 4%, and they will go up to 6% in the next compliance period. And the third option, it's the restriction their use in whole or in part to offset project with direct environmental benefits, or also called GEBs, in Quebec only, or in Quebec and California, because in Quebec we are doing projects, offset project in Quebec, but California, they are accepting projects in all United States. So the vast majority of the offset projects are coming from California in our system. That both are fungible, so the emitters in Quebec can buy some offset credit in California. And it's for all the United States. So there is we want to address this problem to that there is more advancement in the economy of Quebec. It's why we are looking at that options. And the objective are those different option is to incentivize for it's an incentive for emitters to reduce emissions in their own facilities, and reducing the limit on the use of offset credit will result in increased reduction in the sectors of activities covered by the cap and trade system. And for the period of 2020 post 2030 period, we are looking at 2 options. So evaluating the possibility of orienting the offset component into a program for purchasing GHG emissions reductions and CO2 removals from the atmosphere, and maintaining the current regulatory basis for project eligibles for the GHG emissions reduction purchase program and for the removal of CO2 from the atmospheres. It's important to note that the purchase credits coming from the possible credit purchase mechanisms will be retired and will not act as offsets, thus contributing directly to the carbon neutrality objective. So we have a carbon neutrality objective for 2050. Also, the objective of those options is to ensure that GHG emission reduction and CO2 removal project carried out in Quebec contribute directly to achieving the target, and promote the establishment of a price more aligned with the cost of GHG emission reduction and CO2 removal project carried out in Quebec. I will at the moment present the brand new forestry protocol that we developed in Quebec. It's since 2022 that we have this protocol. We use a new methodology, quantification methodology that's unique in the world in the regulated market. We just did a one-pager this Friday. You can access it on the QR code and have some copy also. And for the moment, it's the English version that is available, but we will have a Spanish version really soon. So our methodology is to take, we are taking account the climate benefit of reduction from the atmosphere. So we are looking really to offset, because in forestry, the problem is the permanence of the project. In the WVCI Inc. Initiative, we are looking at a 100-year period. But with the methodology that we are using, we are doing the the translation that one offset, 1 ton of CO2 that is sequestered from the atmosphere has a power of 48 watt per square meter. So it's the equivalent of an offset, and with the calculation, we can do like the equivalence. So here we start a forestry project in 2020, sorry, and 30 years after, it's an example, but 30 years after we implemented the project, the promoter of the project can ask for his offset, and it will have the same impact of if the forest will be standing 100 years. So it's about that. We use the instant radiative forcing to do that calculation. So it's better explained in the one pager that you can access, because it's a really complicated matter to understand, and my colleague is expert, and I can put you in contact with my colleague for that. But it's this brand new quantitative approach permit the promoters to maintain the project in place how long they want. If they don't have to have first in place for 100 years, it can be up to 20, 30 years. It's up to them. And so the permanence is not an issue with that, and there is not reversibility possible. So if there is a fire or insect epidemics, or if the promoters decide to cut down the trees, the benefit, the climatic benefit will already have happened from the first, and we will give the offset for this climate benefit. So, in for example, in Latin America, there is problem with the sovereignty of the lands. The First Nations want to participate in the offset project, but don't want to lose the control of the lands for 100 years. So our methodology permit to address this aspect. And also something maybe interested of for you, we are working very much with the Panamanian government that are really interested with our methodology, and they are thinking about to implement our methodology in their situation. So I think it's about it. Thank you very much.
Now let me please introduce you to Teresa Solazábal. She is head of Carbon Markets Area in the Spanish Climate Change Office, the Ministry for the Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge. She's a senior advisor in climate change and in the international negotiations in the framework of UNFCCC. She leads the area and she leads the area of Spanish implementation of the ETS in the maritime sector, and she's in charge of the coordination of the Spanish Fund for a Sustainable Economy and for the assessment and management of the mitigation projects under it. Teresa.
Thank you, thank you. Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. First of all, let me echo what has been already said in terms of gratitude to the PMI team, and of course for being organizing this valuable event, and also for having invited us to share our views. It's been already mentioned in today's session. We know that we are living a moment of climate emergency. We need, and we know that we need more action and broader ambition in order to overcome the risks that we are facing, and to make sure that our systems are robust enough. I think in this room we all share the view that obviously carbon pricing has a key role in this context, and having this in mind, it's my pleasure to share with you this experience of Spain with one of its probably most relevant initiative in terms of carbon pricing. It's domestic and it's voluntary. It's the Spanish Carbon Fund for a Sustainable Economy. This carbon fund was launched in 2011, and its main objective is to catalyze the decarbonization of the Spanish economy through the implementation of mitigation projects in certain sectors. The sectors have to be outside the European trading system scope, is what we call non-regulated sectors. And until now, we've only accepted projects that are not included in any type of Spanish or European regulation. So from an operational point of view, this is done through a call for proposals, which is done on a year, on an annual basis, and also through the purchase of reductions. The cycle of the initiative is pretty simple. We open a call for proposals. We ask the developers to present their technical documentation where they explain how these reductions are achieved, and we ask them to make a calculation using a specific methodology, which is specific for the typology of the project. The methodology has to be approved by the governance body and is coherent with the CDM projects, and also is in line with the Spanish inventory. So after we receive the proposals, we evaluate them, and we do a selection based on a set of criteria which is public, and it's available in our website as the methodologies. They are also available in Spanish in our website. So once we've done this selection, we sign a contract with the developers. They are 4 years contracts where we specify a fixed price for every ton that we are gonna buy. Until now, the price has been 9.7 euros per ton. And what we ask the developers, apart from respecting the, let's say, the rules of the specific call for proposals, is that they present a monitoring report every year and also a verification report validated by a third party. Here you can have a look at some of the main figures. In terms of relevance, well, the most active sector until now has been the building sector, followed by the waste sector, and we also have several projects in the agriculture sector. Also in the small industry sector, industry which is not covered by the ETS, and also in the fluorinated gases sector. In terms of volume, we've signed more than 400 contracts, which means the implementation of more than 800 projects. And in terms of volume, this means around 4.5 million tons achieved until now. Well, I've already included the evolution of the number of proposals, but we've seen that the appetite from the private sector has been maintained during these last years, which for us it's a success. But of course, this was designed in a different context. It was designed during the first period of the Kyoto Protocol, and then a lot of things had happened. The Paris Agreement came, and the whole international context has changed. The EU has taken the lead in terms of climate action. The Green Deal was launched, and now the Fit for 55 package, it's been implemented. This package, which has already been mentioned, presents a plan for the achievement of the climate targets of the EU to achieve its objective of becoming the first climate neutral continent by 2050. And this package also includes a basket of measures where carbon pricing instruments get even more weight. And Spain, of course, is fully committed with this end, and in this context of broader ambition, we are now redesigning the regulation that rules the fund. Because it's not only the context that has changed, but we also have now 10 years of experience, so a lot of learning there. And we've seen many changes. We've seen, for example, that the state of art of the industry, of the technology has changed a lot. So many initiatives that were very innovative time ago are now pretty settled, and well, the economic support is not that crucial anymore. And we've also seen an evolution in terms of regulation. Many of the developments which were not mandatory are now mandatory. So we cannot cover those type of initiatives. And so with this dual target, we are redesigning it, and probably what we want to do in the first place is to extend the scope of the fund. So apart from these mitigation projects, we are now incorporating other activities such as adaptation activities, and also we are including sinks, and we are including other type of innovative projects in the field of power and of heavy industry. And we also are gonna extend the type of instruments that are used. So apart from the purchase of reductions, we are incorporating grants and allowances and other type of instruments to make it possible. And I think this was more or less what I wanted to share. I think that to conclude, maybe I could say that for us it's been a valuable tool, and to bring in the private sector, and we think that we hope that it will continue to be of use from now on. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Now let me introduce you please to Jackie Mercer. She's the program manager of the Offsets and Emissions Trading section within the Carbon Markets Bureau at the Environment and Climate Change Canada, responsible for the development and implementation of Canada's GHG offset credit system. She has close to 20 years experience working on issues related to climate change, specifically in the area of monitoring, reporting, and verification of greenhouse gas emissions, including supporting of UNFCCC negotiations related to inventory reporting and review, and Article 6 of the Paris Agreement.
Great. Thank you, and very happy to be here today and to share some thoughts and experiences we've had in Canada with the establishment of a compliance offset credit system to support carbon pricing and how we can ensure high integrity of the credits. I want to thank the PMI team for the invitation to join the panel. It's always risky being the last speaker in the first session after lunch, but at least I can blame the air conditioning situation for any yawns today and not the content, hopefully, of my presentation. So I can just move on here. I think there's a couple slides. Oh, maybe we didn't. I can circulate them after. But just to provide a little bit of context, back in 2016, all provinces and territories and the federal government agreed to put a price on carbon. And while I won't get into the weeds on Canada's carbon pricing approach, in a nutshell, provinces and territories were able to choose the pricing system that fit their situation best. The federal carbon pricing system applies in cases where a PT system does not meet certain minimum national standards, which we call the benchmark criteria, or if requested. So at first, we weren't sure if we would need a standalone federal system to support federal carbon pricing. However, it soon became clear when we were developing our compliance flexibility rules for our industrial pricing system that a federal offset system was necessary. And so under the federal output-based pricing system, just as a recap, if a covered facility has exceeded its emissions limit, it can either pay the carbon levy for each ton of CO2 equivalent that's above the limit. So currently the price is $80 Canadian a ton, rising to $130 Canadian in 2030. It could purchase a surplus credit from another regulated entity or use a recognized offset credit up to 75% of their compliance obligation. And while several provinces and territories had their own compliance systems, including Quebec, Alberta, and BC, we felt it was important to have a national offset system to enable projects to happen all across Canada and to ensure that there was a sufficient supply of high integrity carbon offsets that could be used for compliance. So we established the carbon offset system through our regulations. The Canadian GHG offset credit system regulations, they were published in 2022. And these regulations provide the overarching rules for participation. And they cover the cross-cutting elements such as eligibility, crediting periods, environmental safeguards, monitoring, reporting, and verification. And they outline any consequences for non-conformance. But we also recognized we needed to take a little bit of a different approach for the development of our protocols. And while we do look to protocols that currently exist in other systems to the extent possible, I think someone mentioned earlier, like we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We found it necessary to develop our own protocols that take into account our national circumstances. And so while equally as important as our regulations, we also noted that it was necessary to update protocols on a more regular basis than the regulations, to add and update emission factors if an activity becomes not additional or if there's a new activity that should be added. So what we did is we incorporated protocols by reference into our regulation, and this provided us with the flexibility we need, but also maintains the integrity of our system and enforceability of the rules. So Environment and Climate Change Canada is actually responsible for the development and identification of protocols that can be used to generate credits in our system. The protocols include the project-specific elements, such as quantification approaches, baselines, what project activities are eligible. But we don't do it alone. We establish technical expert teams to help us develop each protocol. And so we put out a call for volunteers. We look for project developers, academics, verifiers, but also experts from the provinces and territories where we can learn from your great work over the years, as well as other government departments. And then we publish each protocol for a public consultation period because we really want to get feedback from the users and making sure that we haven't missed anything. And so now that the system is up and running, I can provide a bit of a snapshot. And so the ultimate goal of our system is to provide that financial incentive to implement activities not already covered by pricing or targeted by another GHG reduction program. And so we're really focused on reductions and removals from the agriculture, forestry, and waste sectors and other industrial technologies. Each ton of CO2 equivalent that's reduced or removed is equal to 1 federal offset credit. And note, we don't differentiate between reductions and removals. Both project types can be used for compliance. But if buyers have a preference, they can see information on project types on our registry. We currently have 3 published protocols. So we have landfill methane recovery and destruction. We have reducing GHG emissions from refrigeration systems. So that's where you swap out high GWP refrigerants with lower alternatives. And just recently published an improved forest management on private lands last month protocol. So all in total, we have 29 registered projects, and we hope to issue our first credits this fall. It's pretty exciting. Also under development are protocols for reducing enteric methane emissions from beef cattle, direct air carbon dioxide capture and sequestration, avoidance of manure methane emissions through anaerobic digestion and other treatments, enhanced soil organic carbon, and improved forest management on public or crown lands. And we've also flagged BECCS as an activity for future consideration. And so protocols are developed on an ongoing basis, so we will soon be starting to think about, what comes next in our system and looking to all the work that's being done in this room for great examples of that. And I just wanted to note we also recognize the leadership of our provinces and territories who've had compliance offset systems for quite a while, and congratulations on your 10-year anniversary. And we wanted to complement and not compete with those systems. So the way we developed our rules is that if there is a compliance offset system in a province and territory with the protocol that's published for the same activity, our protocol doesn't apply. So that way we complement and we don't sort of compete for the same credits. And one important thing is that while we originally intended the system to provide a lower cost compliance option for our industrial carbon pricing system, there are no limitations on who can use our credits. And so we used to joke that it was kind of like that Field of Dreams situation where if you build it, they will come, and it's actually coming true. So federal offset credits are currently under consideration for use, not just under federal carbon pricing, but as a compliance flexibility mechanism under other key regulations that are under development, such as our oil and gas emissions cap and our clean electricity regulation. Credits can also be purchased by the government to offset emissions from ministerial travel and for hosting large events. And credits can also be purchased and used voluntarily. For example, our ministry has launched a Net Zero Challenge, which encourages Canadian businesses to develop and implement credible and effective plans to transition their facilities and operations to net zero emissions by 2050. Currently, there are 200 participants, and use of offsets can be part of this plan, so that's kind of a nice tie-in. And just quickly, in terms of how to ensure high integrity credits, for us, starting with the set of principles was really important once we decided we were going to establish a system. And although these principles are common for most offset systems, it was really important for us to, define what they meant in our context. And we needed to point to them in terms of decision making, because I'm sure, as a lot of people in the room know, once you've once you indicate that you're open for business and that there'll be an offset credit system, everyone decides they have the next great idea and looks for the government to develop a protocol for that idea. And while supporting early stage research and development is not the role of the federal system, that's because each credit has to compensate for a ton of CO2 equivalent that should have been reduced at an industrial emitter. So it's really critical to ensure that each credit is robust and has high integrity. So just looking at the principles for both our regulations and our protocols, project is required to achieve GHG emission reductions that are real. So they are only issued for GHG reductions that have already occurred, not pre-issuing credits. Projects must follow a quantification method that we've developed. Everything must be additional to business as usual scenario, beyond legal requirements, not covered by pricing. GHG reductions and removals must be confirmed by an independent third party that's accredited. Projects cannot generate credits in two systems for the same GHG reductions or removals, and any CO2 removed from the atmosphere must be permanently sequestered. So those are sort of our key principles. And finally, I just take the opportunity to pick up on, I think, Flavia's earlier remarks around the need for learning and knowledge sharing and the development of learning materials, such as Carbon Market 101. We also, in Canada, recognize the need to build capacity around carbon markets, both internal to government, but also with potential project developers, verification bodies. And to try to address some of those capacity gaps, we've also published a GHG offset toolkit. It's again a series of fact sheets, little 101s. It's on our website and provides key information to those interested in how carbon markets work. But it's particularly geared, in our case, towards Indigenous audiences. And so we've translated the materials into English, French, and 4 other Indigenous languages, and are starting to roll out a series of workshops with interested Indigenous communities. And so I'm happy to share the links to that material too after if anyone's interested. So thanks again.
Thank you for the speakers. Any questions from the audience? Please feel free to connect your mic and make your questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So I have 2 questions. One for Teresa. So this interesting figure of the fund, it gives the government of Spain an active role in terms of a buyer, playing that role. So regarding the fund, so it's for non-regulated sectors, right? So what do you do with those emission reductions in terms of Spain's? No, nothing. Okay, that's good to hear. Just for the sake of helping.
We
Sectors, right?
include in the contract the possibility of using them, but we haven't used them so far. So for these first 10 years, we're going to close the function of it, and we haven't really used them. So for now, but we leave that option of doing something open, and it's under the contracts. Yeah.
So thank you for that. So on the fund again, so do you buy? I mean, the government buys 100% of the credits of the emission reductions per year, or a percentage, and leave the rest to the company sectors to do whatever they want? That's one. Second is, how do you track those emission reductions, and how do you ensure that you're not double? I mean, there's no double use at least of those credits.
When the developers present their documentation, they have to include the calculation, and we buy everything for 4 years. So if the project gains a reduction of 5,000 tons, our commitment is to buy that amount every year for 4 years. But for example, if the project achieves a greater reduction, there is no use for us, and what they do with that, it's completely out of our control. But every time a developer asks about this, we make that clear that our commitment is with what's in the contract, but nothing else. So they can if they have the ability to put it into the voluntary markets, that's something that goes beyond our control.
Yeah, thank you. And for Jackie, you mentioned removals and this issue of permanence. That means that it's technological removal, or also because it's in terms of, I don't know, forest is so difficult to ensure permanence.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's for both nature-based solution type projects, so forestry and agriculture, as well as technology-based removals. And so in our regulations, we have a commitment to 100-year permanence, and we require monitoring for 100 years. And so we recognize, this is why we know that a lot of indigenous communities are very interested in the offset system, because that aligns with their values and the way that they manage and use their forests and their resources, and they are able to commit to that 100-year permanence. We also have an environmental integrity account, so it's buffer pool, I think, in other systems, where we've worked with our Canadian Forest Service group to establish what the values are that need to be contributed to that, because as you know, like, there's more and more risk of reversals for some of these project types, especially as climate change is not stopping anytime soon. But we also recognize the more Indigenous engagement that can be part of the project. So whether it's co-developed or co-led, different monitoring strategies, the contribution to the EAA can go down. So it actually promotes including Indigenous participation in our project type. So we recognize that there is a difference, but both of them are enabled through our regulations.
Any other question? We have room for two more. Yes.
Thank you. So it's related to what Jackie just said, but the question is addressed to Anne. Recently, Vietnam managed to secure a nature-based transaction with Japan, which is something we greatly celebrate, because it finally opened the door to transactional credit around nature-based solution. How did you address the permanence issue?
Actually, this is a hard question for me because right now, I'm not doing this JGM right now, so it's quite hard for me to answer the right question. So I think I can, or we can contact together and I will inform you later. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, this is for Philippe. So how do the credits, when they get transacted between California and Quebec, get, I guess, recorded as reductions? Can they be recorded as ITMOs? Will they be recorded as ITMOs because they're traded between two countries? And if so, how do you do that?
For the ITMOs, it's not recognized at ITMOs for the moment. We have to talk with our colleagues in Canada, so they recognize our what we are doing with California, and the same thing with California. They have to talk with the federal level, so it can be recognized. We call them STIRs for the moment. We did contability, so you are not doing some double contability, so it's contability that we did. It's available on the website how we do that. I don't have the information at the moment, but it's not. We cannot sell it on the. We cannot buy or sell in the international market with other countries for the moment, because we have to have some discussion between the federal governments on both sides before doing that. I don't know if Jackie want to complete on that part.
I was wondering if you're going to put me on the spot. No, that's a really great question, and we thank Quebec for their leadership in this space. There does require authorization by both the Canadian government and the U.S. government to count any of those net flows as ITMOs, and that's something that we've been thinking about, and happy to report back maybe next year on where things are at with that.
And Sebastián?
It was a question for Angela. And sorry if I missed it in your introduction, if you answered to that already, but I understand that the reason to generate offset is to provide some support to specific projects and communities. why not doing that by using the proceed of the tax instead of generating project?
Thank you, Sebastian. No, actually, I didn't mention that, but thank you for raising it. It the funds raised by the carbon tax are or do have a specific destination. In 80% of those funds goes to the resilience and to the life fund. It is called that way, and it should go to projects of adaptation or also mitigation that tends or aim to accomplish with the NDC target, and also restoration, payments for services, for environmental services, and those kinds of issues, and also, of course, aiming to target the communities. And in 20%, those funds go to the fund, to the peace, Colombian peace fund, kind of. That would be kind of the translation, and it goes to the illicit, to eradicating the illicit crops, and also the peace treat. And so in that way, the carbon tax funds also go or tend to go to those issues, but at the same time, the offsetting mechanism should kind of also target those kinds of those activities in the or through the initiatives or the mitigation initiatives that involve communities. At least for or through the share of proceeds, we could say, from that activity. But that's kind of the thing that we have identified that in some cases wasn't happening. So that was one of the claims from several ethnic communities.
Last one.
Thank you. My question goes to Vietnam. You made, in a very last point, you said that you need to have a very strong coordination mechanism. And I think it's a similar point that was made earlier in the presentations by George. So I just wanted to appreciate, how did you go about it? Did you establish a specialized unit for climate, for carbon markets? Or was it the sole responsibility for the Ministry of Environment or Ministry of Finance? Thank you.
Yes, actually in Vietnam we have the panel, we have the board to work together, and they come from different ministry. But think about sometimes it's hard to get it's hard to get an agreement from different perspective. That's what I mean. For example, consider about the carbon credit from forest. From the Ministry of Agriculture point of view, they just think the carbon from the forest should be easy to to share, to get money and pay back and invest back for community, something like other country, Colombia, for example. But from the different point of view, from the Montreal, for example, they would like to consider about how much we need to consider to contribute to the NDCs of Vietnam, and how much you can sell. So it's based on the based on the different perspective, different point of view. So how to get the agreement from all of them is, that's the difficult things. That's the challenges in Vietnam right now. That's an example.
Thank you for this. Thank you to the speakers. We are ending this session. We have 2 more sessions ahead.